In what is probably the worst idea ever, a New York Times columnist recently floated a new presidential unity ticket for 2024. Biden Cheney. Yikes. So now earlier this week, this columnist for the New York Times, Thomas Friedman, wrote that President Biden should get rid of Kamala Harris and select Republican Representative Liz Cheney as his running mate in 2024. Now, his reasoning is super bizarre. Wow. Now, of course, he's going to use the example of opposition groups to come together to form a unity government in Israel. And so now Israel has a parliamentary system, and so they have to go and they oftentimes have to form coalition governments with each other, the multitude of parties. Our system is actually quite different. And so the logistics of even having that working, again, it's not going to work the same way here in this country. And even so, the choices here are just disastrous. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to his, what he wrote about this. Quote, "It is the most diverse national unity government in Israel's history, one that stretches from Jewish settlers on the right all the way to an Israeli Arab Islamist party and super liberals on the left. Most important, it's holding together, getting stuff done, and muting the hyperpolarization that was making Israel ungovernable." Really, what have they gotten done? What have they gotten done? I mean, other than, by the way, bare minimum here, fighting COVID. That's one of the major things they pass is anti-COVID measures. Well, that's great. Again, that is literal bare minimum. Literal bare minimum. But anyway, my question is, all right, so you want a coalition government, right? Well, now, obviously, Liz Cheney is supposed to represent the right wing. Well, where's the left? Where's the left in this unity ticket? Where's the super liberals, right? I mean, one of them is a hardcore Republican and a war hawk, and the other is a Cheney. I mean, come on. No, seriously, though. Where's the leftist voice on that ticket? Where's the progressive voice? You have the establishment. Basically, you have establishment Republican and an establishment corporate Democrat. That's what you have. Both conservative, pro-austerity. And so, look, progressives in this scenario get sidelined. But there's more, he writes. Is that what America needs in 2024? A ticket of Joe Biden and Liz Cheney? And then goes on to, of course, ask, or to do other hypothetical matchups. Joe Biden and Senator Lisa Murkowski, or Kamala Harris and Senator Mitt Romney. These are all terrible. Stacey Abrams and Liz Cheney, Amy Klobuchar and Liz Cheney, or any other such combination. This dude really likes Liz Cheney. I do not like Liz Cheney. I am not in favor of Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is awful. It doesn't matter to me that she is anti-Trump. That is an incredibly low bar that unfortunately most Republicans do not clear. More importantly, though, is the type of policies that Liz Cheney would promote, which is similar, if not the same, as Donald Trump and the greater Republican Party. The only difference is Donald Trump was rude on Twitter and was actually very honest about Republican policies. Whereas people like Liz Cheney, they try to hide their horrible policies under a veneer of niceness. Oh no, we all get along. I don't like the crassness of people like Donald Trump and how he's so mean. He was so mean on social media. And that's what it is. That's the real problem. No, it's not. The problem is the policies. The problem is the policy. All right. Now, here's my other question, right? So, if you wanted a real unity ticket, why not have a unity ticket with progressives? A real progressive. Now, after all, when you're talking about wanting to appeal, which I assume was the entire point, right? Talking about, hey, you know, we should have a unity ticket to appeal to the American people so that the Democrats could theoretically start winning elections. Because, again, Joe Biden's approval ratings are fairly underwater. He's quite unpopular at this point. There's no high job approval rating. All right? And so you would think that a unity ticket with, you know, a progressive and a member of the Democratic Party might actually lead to some progressive policy that the American people might actually want. Things like expanding Medicare, which is very popular, paid leave, very popular, affordable or free childcare, very popular, lowering the cost of prescription drug prices by allowing Medicare to negotiate these prices with pharmaceutical companies, things like that. But what about higher wages? What about benefits? Running on those things. What about using the power that Joe Biden has right now to cancel student loan debt? What about using the power of under the pandemic to basically dictate healthcare policy and expand Medicare to everyone? What about that? What about that? Now, none of those things, of course, are supported by Republicans. And really, in reality, none of those are either supported by Democrats either. Now, Democrats run on these issues, corporate Democrats, but do they actually do them when they're in power? Of course not. No, there's always a different excuse. Oh, well, the parliamentarian. You know, we can't do this because of the rules. Oh, no. Well, the filibuster. What are you going to do? We can't get rid of the filibuster. No, 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 no. That means we would actually have to do things to stay in power. Because, again, their excuse is, well, if we get rid of the filibuster, when Republicans win, then they're going to run roughshod all over us. Well, that's why you get rid of the filibuster and then do things that are popular with the American people so that they'll continue to vote you in. This is not difficult. All right? This is not hard. But that's the thing. Democrats do not want to do these things. That's why they won't unify with progressives, because, again, they would actually try to do these things. And the corporate donors, you know, the corporate Democrats' owner donors, well, they don't want that. They don't want that at all. And so now with Joe Biden's, you know, approval ratings being a disaster, and certainly we're facing disaster in the midterms that are upcoming, what does the establishment do? What did the centrists, the so-called centrists, do? Well, they decided to trot out Hillary Clinton to tell progressives to shut the fuck up.
I think that it is a time for some, you know, careful thinking about what wins elections, and not just in deep blue districts where a Democrat and a liberal Democrat or so-called progressive Democrat is going to win. First of all, we don't know what the state of the map is going to be after all of the redistricting. It appears as though the Republicans in a number of states are doing their best to eliminate as many seats that Democrats can be competitive in. And so we've got to be very clear-eyed about what it's going to take to hold the House and the Senate in 2022 and to win the Electoral College, because also Republicans are doing everything they can to create an environment in which winning the Electoral College, even narrowly the way Joe Biden did, will be out of reach for a Democrat. So I understand why people want to argue for their priorities. That's what they believe they were elected to do. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to get done if you don't have a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate. And our majority comes from people who win in much more difficult districts. And our majority in the Senate comes from people who can win in not just blue states and hold those wins, as we saw didn't happen in Virginia, but can win in more purplish states.
So now, why are we taking advice about winning from someone who lost to Donald Trump? And not just to Trump, but also lost the 2008 primary against Barack Obama. And by the way, do you remember why she lost to Obama? Because Obama ran to the left of Hillary Clinton. Now, he made big promises. He didn't do them, of course. Did we get a public option? Obviously not. Did he close Guantanamo Bay? No, of course not. Did he do any of the stuff really that he ran on? No, of course not. There was no hope and change. But what we instead got was the right-wing Heritage Foundation Mitt Romney healthcare plan, the ACA, which is awful. But he promised during the election hope and change. We're going to do hope and change, and things are going to be so much better. We're going to do all these wonderful progressive things. Now, what did Joe Biden promise? Joe Biden promised big action on COVID. Now, what's going on with COVID? Omicron's spreading all over the place like wildfire. Hospitals are filled up. You can't find tests. In fact, you had Jen Psaki, I showed you that interview, who basically laughed at the idea of sending out free test kits to all Americans. Now they have this weirdo thing where oh, it's insurance, and then, the insurance will reimburse you. Then you got to go through, a bunch of hoops, and it's a disaster. And being able to have those covered by insurance, why not just send them out free? Why involve private insurance at all? It's ridiculous. It's unnecessary. And by the way, all the pandemic aid for working people, what happened to that under Biden? Gone. It's gone. It's gone. We actually got less economic stimulus. Regular people, we actually got less under Biden than we did under Trump. Now, that doesn't mean like, oh, you should vote for Republicans because Republicans are better. No, Republicans are god-awful. I'm just pointing out, like, the perception here is that the Democrats have actually done less in that kind of stuff, in aid to regular working people, than the Republican Party. And that's a disaster. And if you want to actually win, you might want to step it up. And again, we don't have a public option. We don't have, student loan debt that's been canceled. All these things were promised. Clinton said, oh, you got to give us a Democratic majority so we can actually do things. We do have a Democratic majority. We do. There are 51 Democrats right now. 51. Now, it's not enough to defeat the filibuster, but guess what? You can get rid of the filibuster. Now, by the way, you can say, wow, but what about Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema? Well, I'm going to argue that they're not the only ones that would block these bills. Now, they're the ones right now that are blocking bills, yes. But imagine if they weren't there. Well, you'd still have John Tester, Chris Coons, Dick Durbin. You have other corporate Democrats who basically get paid to stop progressive policy. And then you also have Hillary Clinton coming out there and telling you, expect nothing. Well, we've continued playing this game, and we haven't gotten anywhere. And so now she tells you to expect nothing, and then when, of course, Democrats inevitably lose because they didn't do anything, they didn't follow through on campaign promises, then what are they going to do? They're going to blame progressives, which, again, Hillary Clinton was already doing, and saying, oh, you should really tamp down on your expectations and just not expect anything. Go blue. Go blue. By the way, don't ask for things that people you want. Elect Democrats that win. And you know what she means by that? She means try to appeal to Republicans. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would anybody vote for Republican light when you have Republicans? Now, this Friedman article is another desperate attempt to try to push the party further to the right. And all I got to ask is maybe Democrats just want to lose. I mean, do they? Do they? Because of, if they do want to lose, well, then they're doing a pretty good job. Pretty good job of it. And now maybe they want to because if they do, they can sit back and fundraise on how terrible the Republican Party is, which they are. The Republican Party is a fascist party. And yet, the Democrats, they'll sit back. Nancy Pelosi will sit back and she'll raise tons and tons of money from corporate donors. And then, if they lose, they can sit back and raise that money and not have the pressure on them to actually pass anything. And this is all while Republicans continue to go further and further right to become even more and more fascist. Now, if you want to prove me wrong, please do. Get some stuff passed. Get some real good stuff passed, right? Go, get some real voting rights passed. Pass something on healthcare. Do a stimulus. Cancel student loan debt. Do something. Do a couple of things. It doesn't have to be everything. Obviously, we know that there are limits. But do something. Do something. For God's sakes. Prove us wrong.